Hey everyone, welcome to the NFL edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for September 14th, 2016, brought to you by FantasyLabs. I'm Matthew Freedman, the editor-in-chief, and I'm joined by returning regular Adam Levitan. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam Levitan. Now, earlier I had tweeted out that Peter Jennings was going to join us. He was scheduled to be on the show, but then he remembered that he had a prior commitment. And as much as I would like to give him a hard time for bailing, I think it's punishment enough to have to see the Goo Goo Dolls in concert. So as the song goes, I'm going to let it slide. I'm also going to introduce the guest for this episode. We are pleased to be joined by none other than Evan Silva on Twitter at Evan Silva. He's the senior football editor for RotoWorld and a co-host of the Fantasy Feast podcast. Evan, thanks for taking the time to be on the show.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. We did a podcast during the preseason, and I thought it went pretty well. I mean, I think that people could have gotten some good takeaways from it. Levitan, as usual, crushed it with the preseason usage stuff. And as he mentioned on his podcast early this week and on Twitter, so much of that stuff carried over into week one. I mean, so much predictive intel from the preseason. Yeah. And, I mean, people need to take that more seriously for sure.
Yeah, that was fantastic, especially like Tajay Sharp with his usage. And, yeah. How did you guys do in week one? Adam, how did you do?
Oh God, Jerry is eating like generic kibble off the floor. Like I can't even afford to get Jerry treats this week. You know what I mean? It was a bloodbath out there. It's so frustrating because I feel like I was on a lot of good stuff and kind of got pushed off it for one reason or another. Felt like I was on a ton of that preseason stuff that other people weren't on, just couldn't make it work for the regular season. And I don't know, a little bit tilted about what happened. I put into our chat Sunday morning, like playing 3 running backs on DraftKings, I think was the optimal play, like Michael, Ware, and Yeldon, and then going from there. And if I would have done that, I would have come off Dak. And I would have come off Martellus Bennett and everything would have been good, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on it. So, but going forward, I think that's a pretty good takeaway to, guys around 4K, they're going to get 20 touches in cash or just like must plays.
Evan, how about you? How was week one?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a big week either. And I've historically done well in week ones and just did not do very well this week. Went with Russell Wilson in cash, and that did not go well. Did not have D'Angelo Williams in cash. I play primarily on FanDuel, so really needed D'Angelo Williams. And then I played a ton of Sammy Watkins too, which like late in the week, I really looked into him and I started to love him. And then on Sunday morning, the news broke that he wasn't 100%. I only pivoted off of him in a few spots, and that came to bite me. I think he got like 8 or 9 points on DraftKings and like 5 points on FanDuel. So that hurt me for sure.
All right, well, Evan, on the show, you're going to have the opportunity to make up some of that lost beer money because I told you this via email. Each episode, there are going to be some skill game propositions made on this show. So you're going to have the opportunity to get in on the fun. Right now, I want to get back to Levitan and talk just a little bit about the propositions we had last week and give him the opportunity to do some scoreboard pointing. Mm-hmm. In terms of record, Pete was 3-2. Levitan was 2-1. I'm 1-1. And so for the people who like to do math, that means that Jonathan Bales was the big donkey at 1-3. Bales owes 2 6-packs to Levitan on account of the 2 Corey Coleman propositions. Also at stake, I believe, was the location of where Levitan and Bales are going to meet the next time that they hang out in Philadelphia. Levitan is refusing to go to Northern Liberties. So the 2 propositions, Bales proposed that Terrell Pryor would not have higher ownership than Coleman. On DK, Terrell was at 4.5. Coleman was at 3.6 ultimately. And then Levitan proposed that Coleman would not reach 14 DK points, which was his projection last week at the time the proposition was made. Coleman finished with 8.9 points. Levitan, anything to say about your big victory over Bales?
Yeah, two things. Can I turn Bale's beer into food for Jerry? Number one, and number two. I mean, Corey Coleman was just a flat out atrocious play. I don't know what Bales was thinking. Somehow he won, like 50K or whatever on the weekend to make up for it without using Corey Coleman. But man, Corey Coleman was just a wretched play. I don't know what he was thinking.
He did win all that money with Terrence Williams in the lineup, though.
Yeah, and he had enough money to play Will Fuller in that spot. He was going for the chaos theory. You know what I mean?
You could do a lot worse than Terrence Williams. I'm just saying. I mean, the guy doesn't know how to run out of bounds, but occasionally he can have some big games. Now, also on the propositions, Pete went against Bales and me twice, and it all washed out. I proposed to Pete that Tavon Austin would not score a touchdown. Bales jumped on that with me. Needless to say, no one on the Rams scored a touchdown. And I think I should just safely say, anytime that Peter wants to bet that Tavon Austin will score a touchdown in a game, I will gladly take the opposite side of that skill game proposition. But Pete did propose that Luck would be a top 2 quarterback, and Luck finished as the number 1 overall quarterback. So good on Pete for that. Levitan, you also jumped on that Luck prop, and so you owe Peter a sixer. All right, guys, let's get into the show. Just a quick reminder, in this episode, we aren't going to break down slate matchups, really going matchup by matchup. We do that on the site with our matchups dashboard, and that comes out every Thursday. On this episode, though, we're going to focus more on roster construction and game theory. So, guys, first things first, and Evan, I'm going to start with you, and I'm asking this question knowing that it's Tuesday night. Nothing is set in stone, but right now, which chalky players are you looking to lock in into your lineups and you are fine having as part of your cash game core? I guess who are the first players when you're creating lineups at this point that you are putting into your lineups?
I think that the chalkiest quarterback this week will be Eli Manning. And I think that the chalkiest wide receiver will be Odell Beckham. And I also think that A.J. Green, people will be trying to chase him, and he's in a great spot at Pittsburgh. I mean, he's got great away splits. The matchup is not scary for A.J. Green. I mean, we saw D-Jax go for over 100 yards on Monday night. And I think that D'Angelo Williams will also be really chalky this week. I mean, he's just such a great play. I screwed up and did not have a lot of exposure to him week 1, but I would suspect that he's super high owned. I know at least on FanDuel, I haven't looked at DraftKings pricing yet, but he is way, way below where he should be on FanDuel. And then I also think that Alshon Jeffrey is way, way below where he should be on FanDuel. I think that Monday night game has some hot players in it. No Zach Ertz, and J-Matt was great in week 1. I think that Jordan Matthews is going to be a great play.
Yeah, one guy Evan didn't mention, actually 2 guys that I think will be a little bit chalky and I really like are Cam Newton, number 1. I mean, it's just like the stone nut spot. The Panthers are on a long week. San Francisco off a win on a short week going across the country to an East Coast game. I mean, I think the Panthers can beat this team by 20, 30 points, and Cam is going to have his fingers all over that. I think Cam might be more owned than Eli Manning. I don't know. That's why I have it right now. I might have to think about that. But definitely think Cam is going to destroy. And the other one Evan didn't mention is C.J. Anderson, who we knew how Denver was going to play. They're going to hide their quarterback situation. They're going to play defense. They're going to run the ball. And C.J. Anderson, when he's healthy, is hashtag very good. And home game against this Indy team, which just a total disaster on defense. I mean, I think on FanDuel you could take a long look at playing D'Angelo and C.J. Anderson together.
So one guy that wasn't mentioned is Josh McCown. I'd like to get your thoughts on him. And then also to Evan's point about Eli Manning, there is a pretty sizable discrepancy between his salary on FanDuel and DraftKings. Like right now, I think on FanDuel, he's the 9th priced quarterback, and on FanDuel, he's the 5th priced quarterback. Sorry, I reversed those. FanDuel, the 9th price, DraftKings, 5th price. It's pretty significant, especially considering that he's going against New Orleans. Though, like New Orleans just bleeds points to quarterbacks. So definitely something that might be more FanDuel focused, but still could be a value on DraftKings. What are your thoughts on Josh McCown?
Yeah, go ahead, Evan. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, so I mean, again, caveat that I haven't looked into this too much yet, but there are a couple of concerns that kind of spring up immediately. One of them is that the Browns are going to be a much slower paced team than under Hugh Jackson than last year's Browns were. And also they're going to be a run-focused team. But there are also reasons to really like – and I also – I don't know how much the Browns want to win football games. I mean, I'm dead serious. Maybe that's just a narrative that I've built in my head, but I don't know that they want to win football games. And I think that Josh McCown could get them some wins. I think that he's a very competent quarterback. He's finished top 14 in passer rating in 2 of the last 3 seasons. But as opposed to in comparison to last year when he was very productive when he was healthy, he's got some serious firepower around him now. I mean, Terrell Pryor I think is limited in his route running, but he can make plays down the football field. They didn't have any of that last year. They didn't have any vertical presence in their offense. It was just, Gary Barnidge. And now they got Corey Coleman and Terrell Pryor. And eventually, of course, Josh Gordon will be back. And if you look at the splits for Gary Barnidge and Duke Johnson, they're exponentially better with Josh McCown. It's just I just really don't trust the Browns right now. So I don't know. I mean, is he super cheap on DraftKings?
He's
minimum on
Oh,
DraftKings. Yeah, but that's not like he's like $5K, and there's viable quarterbacks that are like $6,500. So it's not as big a drop off as if he was still a minimum on FanDuel. Like he's $6K on FanDuel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be hard to pay $6K for Josh McCown on FanDuel when Eli is what, like
8,100.
Yeah.
See, I kind of like Joe Flacco at 7,400 against that Browns D that Carson Wentz just ripped up.
Flacco for Flacco.
Now, let's talk a little bit about some chalky players that you are looking to pivot away from. And then, of course, the leverage plays and the pivot plays that you would be considering given the guys that you were looking to pivot away from. Adam, let's start with you.
Yeah, so 2 guys that I'm somewhat shaky on, at least on DraftKings. I mean, Spencer Ware's salary went from $4,400 to $6,100. I don't expect Jamal Charles to play again, so I expect Spencer Ware's ownership to be very high. It's just $6,100 is a high price on DK for a running back, especially when he split the snaps down the middle with Charkandrick West, especially when he's on the road against Houston. So, I mean, Spencer Ware is an awesome player, like led the league in points per opportunity last year among running backs, obviously expanded his pass game repertoire into this year, and that kind of saved his day. I mean, they were down 21-3. I just thought it was curtains for Spencer Ware, and then all of a sudden he starts ripping off pass plays. So, I don't hate Spencer Ware at 6,100, but if he's going to be 25% or something like that, I think I'm off him. And the other one, we should really talk about the San Diego situation because I think it's real interesting, and a lot of people are going to want to just plug Travis Benjamin into their lineup. And I think he'll get 6, 7, 8 targets, which I'm fine with, but they're going to be screens. I haven't seen them use Travis Benjamin down the field, and I'm just worried about their offense as a whole without Keenan Allen, who's just so awesome. So I'm actually really curious about Evan's take on what's going to happen without Keenan Allen there.
Evan, what do you think?
Yeah, so after Keenan Allen went out, Travis Benjamin got a lot of targets. He had
7
targets and a half. 7 targets and a half. I mean, that's a lot. he's not somebody that I'm like, ooh, I really want to play him. But that looks good. That looks good on a piece of paper, and he's got big playability. I mean, dude runs 4.36. I think it'll be Travis Benjamin and Tyrell Williams, the 6'4", 204-pound second-year undrafted free agent out of Western Oregon, who caught a deep touchdown pass late last season from Phillip Rivers. I think it was like an 88-yard touchdown pass. I mean, it was a busted coverage, but the arrow has been pointing up on him since the preseason. There was one point, I think, in the preseason where he got like more first-team reps than Travis Benjamin.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he's on the radar as like a GPP play, and certainly want to grab him in season-long leagues and absolutely in dynasty leagues. I think that Dontrell Inman will be a little interesting in PPR, on DK, because he led the Chargers in all Chargers wide receivers in snaps last week. He's going to be the primary slot receiver, and that is going to put him in position to run a lot of high percentage routes and play against the rookie Jalen Ramsey this week. Jalen Ramsey was pretty good against Randall Cobb last week, but still like to test the rookies. So I think that Inman is pretty interesting. Wish that we would have seen a little bit more of Antonio Gates, a guy not being productive in the first game of the season, where there are already, fall off the cliff concerns at age 36. Wish that we would have seen a little bit more from Antonio Gates last week.
I mean, I assume Eric Berry was on him, right? And also, like, the dude's not on steroids anymore. I mean, let's be honest. He got busted on steroids. He came back and had that big game against the Packers last year, and then it was kind of all downhill from there. I mean, let's be frank. Maybe doesn't have it without the steroids. So, but I do think Antonio Gates is, like, okay. He's still real cheap, so I'm not totally against it.
A couple players I want to get your opinions on. Melvin Gordon in that situation, he still looks fairly discounted on both sites. And then moving away from San Diego, I'd also like to get your thoughts on Theo Riddick and then Tajay Sharp. Both of those guys still look fairly discounted in comparison to the production you might be able to get out of them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I watched every snap that San Diego played after Keenan Allen went down, and it was weird. Like, they were running Danny Woodhead between the tackles while they were up 21-3. Like,
21 touches.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like maybe they think that with Keenan Allen off the field that their better play is some type of spread with Danny Woodhead. I don't know. It just seems like they have consistently shown that they prefer Woodhead in these high leverage situations. So I'm really never going to roster Melvin Gordon. It's kind of similar to the Amir Abdullah situation, and you brought up Theo Riddick. It's like if they're not going to give Amir Abdullah passes, if they're not going to run him in the red zone, what is he good for? They brought in Dwayne Washington for a goal line carry last week, which he converted. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't typically play guys like Theo Riddick. It was probably a really strong play last week given the spot. I don't know. I'm not going back to it when his price goes up and everybody's chasing him.
Mm-hmm. What about Tajay Sharp?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this dude, like, he does double the snaps of every other wide receiver on the Titans. Harry Douglas is playing more snaps than Rashard Matthews. Like, Andre Johnson, who can't even move, is out there playing 30 snaps. It's, like, impossible for Tajay Sharp not to get 6, 7, 8, maybe more targets once again. And I think that the matchup this week, I believe Tennessee is playing the Lions, is totally fine. Like, I don't know what, like, Darius Slay is not somebody, I know he's good. He's not somebody I'm afraid of, and I'm not even sure he would be on Tajay Sharp. Right, Evan?
Right. I mean, I don't think they're going to go shadow a fifth round rookie with Darius Slay, and Tajay Sharp's moving around a lot too. So, I mean, I'm just looking up his price on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a better play on DK because his touchdown equity isn't that high and everything. But
right, for me, I'm giving Melvin Gordon the nod wave too, man. I mean, I think it's nice when guys who have struggled make some plays. You know, he did it in the preseason. He scored 2 early touchdowns, but he was severely outsnapped by Danny Woodhead. And I think that for Melvin Gordon really to hit, he almost needs the Chargers to change their offense and to become more of an under center team and like build their offense around Melvin Gordon. But I think that they're going to build their offense around Phillip Rivers. You know, they since Ken Wisenhunt went there, they've been they've done a lot of shotgun and get the ball out of Phillip Rivers' hands quickly. And I think that they will probably continue to do that. And Phillip Rivers trusts Danny Woodhead more. So I think that Melvin Gordon is probably a pretty good sell high in like a season-long league. And I mean, there's no way I'm gonna go bet money on him in DFS. I don't think. I mean, unless you want to consider him a GPP play, but even then, like I think that there are probably better options than that.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about just a couple guaranteed prize pools. Levitan, let's start with you. Are there any GPPs in particular that have caught your eye this week, ones that you're, kind of really anticipating in terms of the way you're approaching them and strategizing, anything like that? What are the tournament dynamics that you are anticipating for those contests?
Yeah, so the Millie Maker went back to $20 this week on DraftKings, which I think makes a huge difference. You know, instead of 2 million entries in the Millie Maker, we now have 289,000, which is still an outrageously huge number. But at $20 with less entries, I'm far more likely to put money into the tournament. So I think that's a good tournament. I think that the $9 slant on DK is always one of my favorite tournaments. There's only 51,000 people in it, like actually realistic shot to win it, and you can make some really high leverage plays there, flat payout. And then obviously the Blitz, the one the Bales got third in. It's going to be a tough tournament because there's a lot of tough players in it, but I think in terms of using really sharp plays and like not having to go completely off the wall with plays, that's your best tournament if you're looking to play a little bit higher stakes.
Mm-hmm. Evan, any tournaments that you're eyeing for this week?
I always like to play the Thursday tournaments on both sites, but I really, really like the Thursday lock tournament on FanDuel, all the tournaments. I mean, there are a lot of reasons for that. You know, there's good information out on, you know, at the time that those contests lock, but you know, Adam hasn't done his show on Friday night. You know, I think that a lot of really good information comes out on Fridays, and I guess Adam, you do usually get the DFS Edge pod out by then.
Yeah, no, we normally tape Thursday night, so no, I won't be up before the game.
Yeah. So much information is not even out, or it's just fresh and like people are at work and they're not able to consume it yet. So I really like the Thursday lock on FanDuel for a lot of those reasons. And also I think that the best way to play it is to play it pretty risk averse and to pay close attention to the injury report. I mean, you know, definitely still looking for some guys that you think might be under-owned, but you don't want to mess around with guys that are questionable or missing practice in any way. You know, want to be pretty risk averse because you do not want to get in a situation where you have a bunch of dead lineups because, you know, dude isn't practicing, you outthink it, you're trying to go for a low-owned guy, and dude doesn't even end up playing.
Yeah, and kind of sticking with the GPP theme, what are the conventional stacks that you are thinking about this week? Kind of like your basic quarterback, wide receiver, you know, maybe even quarterback, 2 wide receiver stacks. Evan, let's start with you.
Well, I mentioned earlier that Eli Manning and Odell Beckham. Oh, we're talking about 2-man stacks?
or really just kind of any conventional stack that you're thinking of, but not kind of like in the realm of like running back defense or like 2 running backs, like game stack that is something like that.
Well, I think that Eli Manning plus OBJ plus Rashad Jennings is going to be pretty interesting. I mean, Rashad Jennings got 19 touches last week, and I think that he's just not real sexy, and people won't be on him. They, of course, will be on Eli Manning and OBJ. And I think coming back in that same game with, hear me out now, Coby Fleener is a little bit interesting because, first of all, everybody hates Coby Fleener. Everybody before that was open to him and drafted him in their fantasy league hates him now because he sucked in week 1. But dude ran he played almost every offensive snap, and he ran 73% on 73% of his snaps. He ran a pass route, and Josh Hill, the number 2 tight end, suffered a high ankle sprain. So he's going to be out there even more. And they lost their number 3 tight end, Michael Humanawanui, to an injured reserve in the preseason. So, we know that the Giants, they're always going to get torched in the middle of the field. I mean, even last week, Jason Witten had like 9 catches. Mm-hmm. Even little friggin' Cole Beasley had like 9 or something. I mean, or 8. I think he had 8 for 66. So, I like Willie Snead and Coby Fleener on the Saints side. Mm-hmm. But Willie Snead will be hot this week, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the stack everybody's going to be on. It's going to be Eli OBJ, and it's going to be Breeze Snead or Breeze Cooks or whatever again. My conventional thing I have written down here, I mean, I don't know if it's conventional or not, but it's just naked Cam. I already mentioned the spot for Cam. I mean, you could go Cam, Kelvin, Benjamin. I think that if they blow this San Francisco team out, which I expect them to do in this spot, they could reduce Kelvin's snaps to where they wanted them last week. Like last week, he ended up playing 54 or something when they wanted to play 35, but that's what happens when you're in a close game. You want your best players out there. If the game isn't close, I'm sure that they'll scale back Kelvin. So I think I want just naked Cam in this spot. I guess I could be talked into like something wild with like Ted Ginn or Olsen or something like that. But in terms of conventional, I think naked Cam makes the most sense.
I think that something that Adam said earlier was interesting because I was kind of viewing it differently. And I mean, I very well could be wrong about this, but I was thinking that Eli would have easily the biggest ownership this week. And some people might overlook Cam because he didn't have a huge week 1 and because the 49ers defense looked good on Monday night.
Against Case Keenum.
Well, right, but not everybody's as good of a critical.
You don't have to be that good to know Case Keenum was. No, you're right. I'll probably flip that. Like right now on FanDuel, on our projections, I have Cam at 17 and Eli at 13 to 16. I might flip those two, and also Cam is 900 more on FanDuel, which obviously makes a big difference.
So the way that I was looking at it initially was I thought that I was going to use Eli in cash and then maybe Cam in tournaments. But, I mean, if Cam has high ownership, then that's not as attractive. I think that Jonathan Stewart is pretty interesting here. Mm-hmm. Even playing him together with Cam, I think that Stewart will definitely be low owned. He didn't do anything in the first game, predictably, against Denver. And then Gurley, of course, didn't do anything against the 49ers run D. But I'm with you, man, that Cam is in the nut spot right now. You talk about the travel and time stuff. You got Cam coming off the extra rest, going back home where he just he went nuclear and in home games last year. And if the Panthers can do, I mean, dude, for as much fantasy production as Gabbert and Carlos Hyde put up on Monday night, like their offense looked like shit. Yeah. I mean, playing Gabbert is like running up the middle. Like, I don't know. Did you guys watch the game? It was a fucking joke.
Yeah. I watched to like the second quarter and I was so tilted. I just went to bed like beyond tilted. I couldn't even watch.
Jeremy Curley was like just doing whatever he wanted. I mean,
I saw you tweeted or somebody retweeted somebody about the Bruce Ellington MFL shares. So
yeah, I know.
Okay, so one of the situations I am interested in, because I think a lot of people will be on it, is the not St. Louis, sorry, the New Orleans situation going against the Giants. I think a lot of people will be looking to game stack. Are there any potential ways that you think you could get exposure to that game without ending up with a lineup that is super chalky?
Yeah, I mean, I think Evan hit it. I mean, the Giants have been the worst team in the league against tight ends for, greater part of the last 2 years, 3 years, maybe more. Their just scheme and their personnel dictates that. I think Mark Ingram, for whatever reason, I don't know if you had a read on this, Evan, but for whatever reason, Mark Ingram's snap count was really low.
Yeah.
I don't know why exactly. You have any idea why?
I mean, they use a bunch of Hightower and Travaris Cadet. Travaris Cadet got 7 targets. I think he had 2 drops.
It's so weird. Like, Sean Payton is like my most hated man. Like, I know I've ranted on this guy like 3 times already, but like, if you don't have anything truthful to say, just don't say anything. Don't say that like CJ Spiller is going to have a huge role. Like, don't say that Michael Thomas is your starter and you're the guy you'd want in fantasy when like it's pretty clearly not true. Don't give Kobe Fleener $36 million like a dolt. You know what I mean? Like, I can't stand this guy right now. But I do think Mark Ingram, like, if they get their act together, Mark Ingram to me is a really good tournament play.
Any contrarian stacks, sort of advanced stacks that kind of stand out to you for week 2?
Yeah, I have 2 written down here. The first one, Marvin Jones was probably the most popular player, one of the highest owned players. And I thought his usage was actually encouraging. I mean, he got 11 targets. I thought he played reasonably well, kind of found the bottom of his range of outcomes with the result, which I think was still like 4 catches for 80 yards. So I think a lot of people will turn off him, where I'm still on him. I'm still on Stafford. I think they'll go overlooked against Tennessee. So I think that's kind of like a bounce back spot after a guy was over-owned. Now he'll be under-owned. And then the other one I have down here is, I mean, I don't know. This one's hard for me to pull the trigger on again, but from a matchup perspective, I mean, we know that Desmond Trufant wasn't on Mike Evans the whole game. Vincent Jackson ran a lot of routes at Desmond Trufant last week, but this week upcoming, and we know for sure that Patrick Peterson is going to be on Mike Evans, and that's going to leave Vincent Jackson on Brandon Williams or Justin Bethel if Justin Bethel can get his foot right, which I don't think he'll be able to. So, Vincent Jackson to me is another bounce back play. I mean, he's 4K on DraftKings, and I'd be shocked if he got less than 6, 7, 8 targets against a rookie corner in this game.
Evan, any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think I agree with it all. I was going to bring up Joe Flacco and Mike Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
People are still not going to want to play Mike Wallace, even though he did some work last week. And he gets to go against the Browns defense that last year gave up 2 long balls. Last week gave up a long ball to Corey Coleman, 58-yard bomb, and Terrell Pryor, 44 yards. And also Jimmy Garoppolo and Rob Gronkowski, if Gronk plays, I think is a little bit interesting against the Dolphins. So I think that stands out a little bit to me as maybe lower-owned quarterbacks. It's just like right now, Cam and Eli Manning really stand out as the clear-cut 2 best quarterback plays in week 2. And again, I mean, I haven't even done all my research yet, but it seems like they stand above. So if people are hitting those guys hard, then the ownership for everybody else will be really spread out. I think Marcus Mariota is a little bit interesting against Detroit, which Andrew Luck just shredded. You get to use Mariota indoors, he will absolutely be low owned. He showed a monster ceiling last year as a rookie with nothing around him. And, now he's got a decent little receiver. And, Delaney's still there. And, I don't know, Harry Douglas, like, he can set good picks in the red zone for Tajay,
Harry Douglas, that's an interesting call there. Yeah. So you mentioned there, Joe Flacco. I'm curious, would you have any inclination on stacking him? And this would be super contrarian, but stacking him with one of his running backs, or do you have any idea on what is happening with that running back situation there in Baltimore?
I think the guys just suck. I mean, I think that Justin Forsett just sucks, and Terrence West, I mean, he looked all right in the preseason, but, usually it's the case that I don't know. I mean, I don't think either guy's very good, so I wish that the guys were good. And Ryan Matthews didn't really tear it up last week against the Browns. So I don't know. I would probably not stack Flacco with one of his RBs, but I might look at – this would be super contrarian – Steve Smith, who he – like, don't throw up at him,
I hate that guy.
He's the oldest receiver in the league. He's coming off a torn Achilles, had 19 yards on 9 targets. Only Tavon Austin was worse in yards per target. But he did see 9 targets, and he gets to go against the Browns. I mean, who did Joe Hayden get beat by for a 35-yard touchdown last week?
I was pretty surprised Dennis Pitta played like every snap last week, or like the vast majority of snaps. I used to love Dennis Pitta before hip issue.
Fucking Nelson Aguilar beat Joe Hayden for a 35-yard touchdown last week.
Yeah.
Well, Nelson Aguilar, as we all know, is a really good player. But going back to Steve Smith, I don't know. I don't think there's any way he gets the targets this week that he got last week.
Fair enough. I mean, he led him in targets and snaps played.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I'm
not saying he's a good play, but nobody will. I mean, we're thinking of people who you can stack Joe Flacco with. That's what sucks about Joe Flacco, honestly, is that you got to play like Mike Wallace or Dennis Pitta, or Dennis Pitta might actually be like the highest floor option out of all.
Yeah, I think I would probably still, if I had to stack, I think I'd probably still go with Wallace over Steve Smith. But you're right. I think the Smith-Flacco stack will be much lower owned. Guys, let's get to the portion of the episode where we make some bold calls. Now, last week we were total trash on our bold calls. I think that's fine. I think the idea is not to be right on even the majority of the bold calls, but the idea is to be leveraged to upside with these calls. So with that said, last week, Pete predicted that the Cardinals would win by at least 2 touchdowns. Bales predicted that the Packers would win by at least 2 touchdowns. Levitan, you came closest. You predicted that Jarvis Landry would have 10 receptions. All of you flamed fantastically. Okay, so the 2 of you guys, give us one bold real football call and then one bold DFS call. And Levitan, let's start with you.
Yeah, my bold real-life call is that the Rams, who just got shut out by the San Francisco 49ers, will come home and beat the Seattle Seahawks. Nobody is giving them any chance whatsoever after you get shut out by San Francisco, but the line is only 3.5, and I've seen it hold there. I mean, to me, that says that the Rams are going to play well. I think that when they come home, that defense can play far, far better. I think Russell Wilson's ankle injury shouldn't be taken lightly. I mean, if his mobility – I mean, he's going to play, but if his mobility is limited whatsoever, I think that's a huge, huge blow to that team. So Rams win the game. That'll be my bold real-life call. And for DFS, Danny Woodhead finishes as a top 5 running back on DraftKings for the week. Already talked about the problems with Melvin Gordon. Already talked about with Keenan Allen out, how they might just go spread completely even more often and kind of get into a shootout with Jacksonville.
All right, Evan, let's go with you.
I'm going to go with Kobe Fleener gets in the paint this week.
Mm-hmm.
That would be bold.
And I think, you know who's really friggin' interesting this week, who no one will be on after everybody was on him last week? Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
No one will be on him this week.
So do you have some sort of bold call associated with Dak Prescott? You think he's going to blow up when no one's on him? Not that bold.
One thing you got to keep in mind is that last week Cole Beasley dropped a touchdown pass and Dez Bryant had one overturned.
Mm-hmm.
So people will look at the fantasy points and they'll be like, ugh.
Yeah.
But it could have been much bigger. And they only ran them twice. And they dropped them back 45 times.
Yeah.
And
he played really well in the first half. Like, he looked awesome. And then they started getting pressure on him, and he didn't look to run at all. I don't know why.
Yeah, and they and I think Zeke could go nuts too. I think that it would be interesting to play Dak. And I mean, they need a win now, dude. Like, they just lost a home opener. You know, like, they need a freaking win. They need to go out and be aggressive and not be passive. And the Redskins' run defense was bad last year, and it got smashed by D'Angelo in week 1. And I mean, I can't really play Dez, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think about playing Dak plus Zeke and then really not having? I mean, maybe some Witten, but I think people might be on Witten. I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. Maybe a little bit. What do you think? Just playing Dak and Zeke.
Yeah. I don't hate it. I mean, Dak's price has come up a lot, right? So, like, he's $7K on FanDuel now. Like, that's I mean, but, you know, like, I mean, the dude has it in him to, like, throw for 2 and run for 2 for sure. But Carson Wentz, you know what I mean? So I don't know. He'll be low owned for sure. It'll be pretty comical how far his ownership drops. But I definitely like Zeke. I mean, the Redskins tackling and, like, overall defensive like game plan and execution last night was just abysmal. Like, I've never seen anything like it. That was embarrassing.
That was embarrassing in a home opener like that.
Oh my God. I really thought they were going to win too.
I did too, man. I think that a lot of sharp bettors thought that they were going to win too. I mean,
yeah.
All right, guys. I think it's time for the finale here, where we make some skill game propositions. Levitan, I'm going to start with you so that Evan has some time to think of his.
Well, I know that I have one about a guy that I know Evan's going to be on this week, and I kind of like this guy, but I'm not completely sold. So I'd be willing to take Evan under on his projection, whatever we have on Labs, and that's LeGarrette Blount, who
always like Blount, dude.
I know Evan is on him. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You know, we saw how they're going to try to play, especially if Gronk's out. You know, they're just going to try to play ball control and use Blount a ton. And we know he has a decent chance at a touchdown. It's really a tough spot for Miami too. I mean, who created Miami's schedule? Like, their first game, they go from Miami to Seattle, and their next game, they go up to New England. Like, so brutal. But that said, I'm always willing to bet against touchdown-dependent guys, and I think LeGarrette Blount is certainly that. So I'll take the under if Evan wants to, whatever our projection is on him.
Okay, so that projection right now on DraftKings is 13.5 points, and on FanDuel, it is 12.1. So, Evan, you decide which site you want to choose.
He doesn't have to. I don't even know if he's still high on LeGarrette Blount. I just assume that he is.
Oh, I'm always high on LeGarrette Blount. I mean, as like a FanDuel player,
Yeah.
There is nothing better than LeGarrette Blount in a good spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have LeGarrette Blount, 12.1.
I will definitely bet Adam on that.
The problem is that Evan needs like 18 beers to get drunk. He can't just have a 6-pack. We gotta raise the stakes. You know what I mean?
Well, we don't need to raise the stakes. We just need to have him do a lot of skill game proposition. I've got one here. I don't know, Evan, if you actually would be interested in this one, but I'm going to say Steve Smith, fewer than 9 targets. What do you got last?
I mean, come on, dude.
What's the number? What's the number? Five is too low.
I now regret even mentioning Steve Smith's name on this show.
Okay, I'm going to say Steve Smith has fewer than 7 targets. Would you take that one?
Give me 6.5.
Yeah.
You got to take that, Freedman.
Okay. All right, 6.5.
He's
okay.
a corpse.
Yeah, he is. Okay, so Steve Smith, we have Freedman versus Silva, 6.5.
Yeah, I'll take one against Evan on Josh McCown. It sounds like Evan's a little lukewarm on Josh McCown. I'll set the over/under on yards at 250 if he wants to take that.
Okay, I'll take the under. I mean, one thing is that the Ravens D played pretty well last week.
Yeah,
I knew you were going to say that. I knew someone would be like, hey, they sucked last year, but in week 1 they were awesome against a team whose offense seems built not to move the ball.
Yeah, with a hurt number 1 receiver.
Fair. Although Sammy in the game, man, he did not look hurt. Like, he ran some dope routes, man. I mean, that's so frustrating.
Anyone want the Tavon Austin will not score a touchdown skill game proposition? That's going to be like an open invitation if anyone wants it.
No, I'm not a Tavon Austin guy. I don't know how the Rams are going to win the game, but they're going to just like something weird and wild.
They always give Seattle a hard time too, for whatever that's worth.
This is the first game in Los Angeles since like 1970 something, right? Or 80 something.
Yeah. 90s. Pretty sure the 90s. Yeah, pretty sure the 90s. Okay, I have one on Eli Manning, although I don't know how strong I want to be with this one. I think that Eli won't be a top 5 quarterback this week.
What?
I'm trying to make it juicy enough for you to jump on it.
All right, I'll take it.
I want some more action here.
Yeah, I'll take that.
I'll take that for sure, man.
Okay.
Hey, all right, so are you going to leverage with Rashad Jennings or Shane Vereen? I guess Shane Vereen would have to score from Eli. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea would be that they end up doing some more things on the ground. So I would say like more of a Rashad Jennings getting sort of like 20 carries type of game. And maybe it's just not as good of a game as people think it will be. Maybe they kick a lot of field goals. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm going to go with Eli Manning not as a top 5 quarterback, even though he's playing a team that makes every quarterback look like Cam Newton.
All right, you're on.
Okay. Any more from you guys?
I think we got some good ones. All
right.
I got one more guy that I want to talk about. I don't know. How many people do you think will watch the show?
Well, now I have to hear who this is.
All right. If we get a lot of watches, might have to edit this out for you, okay?
I can't guarantee that.
Jesse James, Stoneman on FanDuel. Okay.
Yeah.
7 targets in week 1. I think he had 2 red zone targets. I still got to look at that. In 2 games against the Bengals last year, who of course are the Steelers' week 2 opponent, Ben Roethlisberger targeted his tight ends 25 times, and Heath Miller had 10 catches in both fucking games. Jesse James to the house.
Penn State zone. I like Jay. I think he can play a little bit.
I do too, man. I do too. Yo, Freedman, didn't John Moore like him?
I don't remember. At some point, it seems like he's like so many different tight ends that I just kind of forget.
Fair enough.
And the thing with tight ends too is it's also the type of thing where there are so few who make instant impacts that like you just kind of have to forget about some tight ends for a couple of years. And then like once they start to get their opportunity, then you start to go back to like your original research of these guys when they were coming out as draft prospects.
You know, Virgil Green's going to be like that this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He's finally getting that opportunity.
100 more than James.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Virgil's 4,600 on FanDuel.
Oh my goodness.
He's
awesome.
got talent. He's a guy. I think the breakout with him is coming, especially if they have to start to limit Demaryius a little bit. I think some of those targets are going to have to go somewhere, and Kubiak does like to hit the tight ends whenever he has a competent player there. He didn't really have that last year, but I think there's definitely the opportunity this year for Virgil. I think that's a good like that would have been a good bold call there. The Jesse James love there. All right, I think that is going to do it for the show. We've been speaking, of course, with Evan Silva and Adam Levitan. You can follow them on Twitter at Evan Silva and Adam Levitan. Two really original Twitter handles, guys. You need to up your Twitter handle game to something like Matt F. the Oracle. I mean, that's like perfect. And that, of course, is me. I'm Matthew Freedman. This has been the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for week 2. If you like the show, please rate and review us. Give us a little bit of love. Also, you can contact us via email, podcast@fantasylabs.com. Let us know what you think, and follow us on Twitter at FantasyLabsPods. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck, and we will see you next week.